welcome back to Raw Ivory. I'm Julia Griffin here today with our in-depth tutorial of how to create a similar title sequence or title card to the Thor Ragnarok one. When I saw this title card, I went absolutely crazy for it in a totally sexual way. So let's dive right in, as this is a very long and in-depth tutorial. The first thing I'm going to have you do is download the Dojo extruder from creativedojo.net. You can pay for the extruder here, or if you're a little tight on money, you can always get it for free. It's $6.99, and that's a pretty great price for a really good script. So once you've done that, you'll also want to download these two fonts, Dameron off of DaFont and Madi Thorson. I've also included them in the download link below for the project file. So first we're going to create a new HD composition. Go up here to New Composition, 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames per second with a length of 5 seconds. Alright, now I want you to hit Control T or type up here for the type tool. And we're going to use Madi Thorson to write Ragnarok. Now this is not exactly the font that they use in the film, but I believe that that was designed in-house and is not actually a typeface that is available. Now this font's a red color, and that's okay. We're going to use a paint layer on top of an extruded red text layer to create the false 3D effect. Alright, now that we've got everything ready, we are going to put a gradient ramp on this type, just to make it pop a little more. So I want a light red at the top, and a very dark red at the bottom. Now as you can see, you can't really see that, and the reason is the points of start are very far apart, so we're going to move those just by clicking here, and then move the other one right about here. We're going to hit toggle switches and modes down here and make this into a 3D layer. If you don't know how to make a 3D layer, you just check the box right here with the little cube. So now we are going to animate it. So this is where we want it to end up. So I'm going to drag this out to about 20 frames or so, and then keyframe it. Remember to always keyframe the end first. That way you just have less issues with animation. It's easier to keep everything nice and neat. And then we are going to take the time indicator back to the beginning, and right here in the Z coordinate, which is the third coordinate that appears when you make a layer 3D, we're going to put a negative 2230. Bam. See, that is right up in our face, which is not what we want. We want it coming in from that bottom edge. So we're going to take it down here in the coordinate in the Y and just drag straight down. Make sure that you have your indicator on the keyframe. That way you don't have any funny business or any extra keyframes, which will make your animation look jerky and herky. And we want that little bit of edge right there, because it just dives right in after that flash. And as you can see, the ramp actually changes as we change the position, which I kind of think gives it a little extra depth when you move it like that. Now what I'm going to have you do next is to go into the project window. If it's gone, just hit Control 0. And I want you to rename your comp Ragnarok. That way it's easy to find. There's a lot of comps in this project, so please keep them organized or you'll lose some stuff. And hit Control D while you're still in the project window, and you get a Ragnarok too. So we're going to rename this to Thor. And the reason we're doing this is so it's just to streamline our workflow and also help, because we have two separate comps, we want the type to interact properly and be in the right place. So we're going to use this Ragnarok initial text thing that we have here to place the Thor text. That way everything works. It just makes everything work a little easier. And as you can see, we have the same keyframes, so everything will be right on top of each other like that. We'll just have to adjust a little bit So we're gonna make sure we're on top of that keyframe. Remember, hit shift while you're dragging to grab the keyframe and move that guy up. Oh, that actually looks kind of cool. But yeah, that's not exactly what we want. We want it to be coming in from the top. So let's select that first keyframe and use the Y coordinate to put her up there. Remember, we want a little bit of that edge sort of busting into the frame. See, that has a nice little just, yeah. And then we're gonna go in here to this gradient and we're gonna change the points in the gradient so it looks a little more like that. And then we can hit Control T again, write Thor. This is not the correct font, so let's select it all. And yes, Dameron. Perfect. So then we'll want to move this guy over, and remember to, when you're moving it at all, just shift click as you drag, or shift as you drag, so you get the, you grab those keyframes. We don't want any extra keyframes. Okay, that did not work. I just wanted to see if it would work. All right, and we're going to drag it over in the X coordinate. Remember, keep your keyframe selected as you do this, so you don't have any funny business. And just drag it over so it's nice and centered. But as you can see, like from our path here, that looks terrible. And this is because I did not fix the anchor point on this type, which is an issue. Always fix the anchor point on your type before you animate. See, even then, like even when we try to fix it, if we just move it over, it's still giving us that weird path, which is not what we want. We want it to have a nice, straight, centered path. So let's actually delete all of these guys. And we are going to put the X at 0. Then we're going to take the anchor point tool and we are going to move the anchor point right into the center of the text, like that. And like I said, try to remember to do this with all of your type before you animate. It'll just make things less hellish. So let's reanimate that path really quick, which is what we should have done from the beginning. So here we have it nice and centered, and let's make it just so we want it like to have that line in the middle. We want to have our room for it, you know. So let's, yeah, that looks good. So keyframe back to the beginning, and remember negative 2230 in the Z coordinate. Bam. Okay, now that's looking good. So I'm just going to adjust the gradient a little bit. This is a little dark on top, just, you know, with the different typeface. I'm going to brighten it up a little bit. All right, and yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. So we're going to delete the Ragnarok now, because remember that we have that in a separate comp. So I want you to delete this. And what we're going to do is split this guy, because we want that outline at first and then the solid type. So select your type layer and put it right about a little bit after where that last final keyframe is. And then I want you to hit Control-Shift-D, and we're going to split this layer. There we go. Now we have two separate layers here. The top one's going to be our solid, and the bottom one is going to be our outline. So what you are going to do is select our outline. We're going to have a little bit of overlap just to make everything a little smoother, and then we're going to do a little bit with the opacity. Just like that. See, right now we have no, it's just the same. So what you're going to do is you're going to remove this fill. What you do is you just hit the no fill button right there. Boom. And you've still got your outline left. Got a nice stroke on there, maybe 2 pixels. And yeah, and as you can see, that's a little rough. What we're going to do is clean that up with some, you know, just some dissolves with using the opacity. So we're going to duplicate these again to create that that gold color that's on top of the like red 3D part. We're going to change these to yellow really quick so it's just easy to tell. I'm going to have these on top. Now we're going to go in and adjust the colors with our gradient ramp. So for the highlight, I want like a really bright like goldenrod, and for the shadow I would like sort of a almost like a dark orange, like a bronzy color, I guess. Yeah, that's perfect. All right. Oh, and it turns red, so let's also change the gradient here. We've got our nice bright goldenrod. Actually kind of like that with that dark red. That looks kind of nice, like a burnt umber. But anyway, we want that sort of a, you know, that bronzy, like a warmer bronzy. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, and that's like nice little subtle gold. You can see the gradient moving through it, giving it that little extra punch. All right, and now we are going to apply the echoes, which is kind of the heart and soul of this effect. Echoes are a little bit heavy on your GPU. The settings I change in my echo effect are the number of echoes and the decay. Right now I'm setting the number of echoes to 5 and the decay to 3.5. You also want to add the blend mode of your echo to maximum rather than add, because we are going to put in the glow while we are compositing. So you can see we have that sort of 80s effect there. Remember that transition's still a little And we're losing the red as well. Let's actually take the number of echoes up to 10 from 5. Let's like make it a little more dramatic. Let's see how that looks. Oh no. Let's take the echoes on all of them up to 10. And remember that we don't want them to be add, we want to put maximum. Because the glowing and stuff we're going to put in when we composite. Oof, oh lord. See, that's really rough. See, that's where it really starts to show that the transition is not very smooth, is once we start animating. So now, let's work with the opacity. So we want to keyframe it so it's at 100, and then take it down to 0 here. Let's see how that looks. Oof, still really rough. Let's increase that overlay here and push the opacity transition back a little more, so we really get more of those nice like fine lines that are giving us so much glamour. All right, and we're going to do the same here, just to smooth out that transition between the underlying red. Remember, we want 10 echoes at 3.5 decay, and we want to change it from add to maximum. And here we run into an issue because we need to reposition our red again so that it shows. So select both of the red layers. I'm going to select them both and hit shift while I'm dragging the time indicator to get both of those keyframes. because we want both of those keyframes. And then we are just going to crank that down a little bit. I'm just going to fine tune this positioning till it looks, yeah, see, that's not bad. Remember, we're going to punch up this 3D look with the Dojo extruder once we're finished animating the type. All right, just fine-tuning the opacity for the transition here. I'm speeding this up because it's a little boring, but that'll do it. So now we are going to do the same thing with the Ragnarok comp. Actually, what we're going to end up doing here is splitting the comp, so we only have the red as the punch-up background, and we're going to use the echo effect on the paint layer. So make a new comp and name it paint, or rag paint. And I want a new solid. Doesn't matter what color it is, but I'm going to pick this blue here. You know, kind of want to get that feel with the texture they used. Hit OK. And now we are going to put another gradient ramp on here. And I want it to go from like a blue, like a light blue, to a white, and then I want to sort of, all right, give me a sec. Yeah, so white on the top and then sort of a light blue on the bottom. There we go. And I want to punch this gradient up because I don't want it to be too, I want it to be a little subtle. So now I want you to take the rectangle tool, so we can get some really straight lines here, and I want you to draw a rectangle across the comp right here, and make sure there is no stroke, or you turn the stroke off. You can do right here, and then make the fill red. We're gonna go for a look slightly darkish red, not too bright, a little bit of a mid-tone. All right, and now I'm gonna go into the path. After aligning, want it to be right in the center of the comp, and we are going to add a repeater. So take the repeater, go into transform repeater, and in position I want you to zero out the y coordinate, because we only need it going up and down, not side to side. So then I'm going to try this. That's much too far apart. Let's start taking it down. And even more. Yeah, see, we want it nice and close together. Let's punch up the count. I want you to go to scale and unlock the proportions, and just use the Y to make play with the Y till you have this sort of fading out effect where the lines get slimmer and disappear near the top. Or just use the Y and make sure you unlock. Okay, so now we've got this here. And we're gonna slap that guy on top. But as you can see, it's not lined up at all, so let's work on that first. Let's get this. Now I want the bottom of the letters to be you know, kind of sitting on it. See, this is even too wide, so I think we're going to go back in the lines and work with our repeater to tighten up the design of these lines really quick. Just make them space a little closer together and increase the count. Cool, that's closer. So bring this up here. I want the bottom of the letters to be sitting on the thickest line. So we really are getting like those thin, nice little slices, because the lines are very delicate and thin on that type design. There we go. See, that's not looking too bad. Remember, this is the alpha matte, is the lines on the bottom. And to get that echo effect with the paint layer, what we're going to do is animate the fill. So go to animate in your text options and go to fill opacity. And then right around here, we are going to put a keyframe down because we want to make sure that the fill comes in, the whole paint layer will be showing at this point. And then just drag the time indicator back a little and put it on 0 for while we have the outline, which make sure there's an outline on your type. Mine is about 2 pixels. As you can see here, the animation of the type is scanning through the texture that we're trying to apply to it. So what we do to fix this problem is make sure you have the time indicator at a point in the timeline where everything is aligned, right about here. And then using the pick whip tool, which is that little curly pig's tail right there, in the layer menu, you're going to select your paint layer and parent it to the type layer. So I want you to make a new composition now, 1920 by 1080, and I want you to call this one type. What we're going to do is drag all of our files here, Thor, Ragnarok, and then Ragnarok paint, or rag paint on top. Then we are going to extrude the two, we're going to extrude the 2 type layers into using the Dojo extruder. Now here you go to File, and then you go down to Scripts, and you'll see here it'll say Run Script. Now select that and go to where you have unzipped the Dojo extruder. If nothing is showing up in that file, go here and hit all to this selection menu, and you'll see this little window pop up here. The number is how deep you want your extrusions, like the number of files to be copied. So I'm going to set it to about 20 rather than 40 because 40 is a little bit render heavy. Right, you can see the extrusion, and when you select the control files, you'll see all the different options. Now we're just going to select Ragnarok and do that again, so they're both extruded. And remember, we're just doing it on Ragnarok, the red one, not on the paint layer, which goes on top. So let's give it a second to load. Yeah, see, we're getting there with the way that it looks. Now let's fine tune. So for the extrusion settings on Thor, I want you to set the extrusion depth to 17, the bevel size to 7, the lighting amount to -2.6, and the shading hardness to 0.8. And the light direction for all of our extrusions is going to be 45 degrees. And I want you to use these same settings in the Ragnarok extrusion as before. Now this is going to make our paint layer look like crap on top of the 3D. So now we are going to finagle the scale and position of the paint until we have it at a point where we're liking the way that it looks. We're also going to set the layer style of the paint layer to bevel and emboss to give it a little more depth and to mimic the style of the original more. Now I want you to go into the layer style menu and into the bevel and emboss settings, and I want you to crank up the softness and change the direction to down. And let's make the angle about 45 degrees. There. And then really crank up the highlight opacity. Yeah, and so we've got this nice little sort of punch in with the paint layer. And now we're going to parent the paint layer to the Ragnarok source layer. And here, the problem I ran into was that the outlines were in the problem was that I needed to cut up the red Ragnarok extrusion in the type layer, in the actual type layer. So like just go all the way down the rabbit hole to find that red layer, and I want you to slice off the part with the outlines completely, so all it is that solid at the end. Then we're going to apply the same echo onto the paint layer that should have the outline transitioning into the solid. So remember that the settings are just 10 echoes and then 2.5 or 3.5 in the decay. Now I want you to make a new comp and double click in the project folder to import the space picture that I have included in the project file below. There's plenty of actually great space pictures in the public domain on Google if this one does not suit your needs. So I'm going to drag and drop that into our comp. And it's huge. I kind of want the scale to be a little different, so we're going to unlock the scale here and bring the Y down so we have a little more compressed, because we're just going to have a little simple horizontal glide going on. Stretch it out a little bit. There we go. Compress it because we want it to stay, you know, not looking stretched or anything. And then lock the scale again. Hit keyframe to keyframe the position. Drag the time indicator all the way to the end and move it, I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 pixels, not even 100 pixels, because we want it to be a nice slow glide that, you know, is just, it's almost no motion at all. Just like this. Very subtle. So now I want you to make a new solid, and I want it to be a very dark blue, because this is us pushing this space part of the background back. Now this can be any dark color you want, depending on the tint that you desire. And I'm going to take it to multiply, and then I'm going to hit T for opacity, and I'm going to crank it down. Just play with this here till I get the look that I want. There we go. So nice dark, gently moving space. Now I want you to make a new shape layer. Get rid of the fill and use the pen tool with a white stroke. Keep it at about, you know, like 2 pixels. And then we're just going to start creating a really simple starburst shape, just from the edges, dot to the center. Okay, so once we have these 3 like base lines, I want you to pre-comp and then call this starburst. And then in the starburst pre-comp, I just want you to duplicate these layers and move them and make them different lengths and different thicknesses. It doesn't have to be perfect. Try to make the center kind of neat, even though it's going to be covered up. And then we are going to apply a radial blur to the top. Here I'm just adjusting it so that all of the arms of the starburst reach the edge, which will basically be moot once I scale it up. And I want you to I want you to choose the first layer in the shape pre-comp and the starburst pre-comp, and I want you to give it a rotation of about 45 degrees in the full 5 seconds. And then I want you to take all of the other layers and just parent it to that first layer, so we have a nice slow rotation going on in the background. Next, we're going to create a new solid for our particle layer. Any color will do. Just go into the effects panel now, and I'm going to use CC Particle World. Just drag that and drop. And you see we've already got like the basic shape that we need of that like circle in the center, everything coming off of it. So first we are going to go into the physics, or the particle, where we want a faded sphere. Get that nice soft edge like that. And we're going to change the colors to black and a very dark red. So very dark red for the highlight and a full-on black for the shadow, like that. Now we are going to make sure that the birth size is high and the death size is low. That way they sort of disappear as they go. They get big and then they sort of shrink out of existence. And we want it to be explosion in 0 gravity. You know, take it down to thereabouts. And crank up the inherent velocity a little bit. So let's see how that looks. Very nice. We want it to be a little more solid in the center, I think. So we're going to slow down the inherent velocity a lot. Here I'm going back into the starburst comp and making some of the lines thicker to just give it a little more randomness. And you'll see here we're having issues with the edges once we composite it. So just unlock the scale proportions and scale it up so that it is, you know, reaching all the edges and we don't have any issues with that. And that way we don't have to go back and spend a ton of time editing individual lines. I added a Gaussian blur and set the layer mode to add after scaling it up to about 163%. Then I duplicated the starburst layer, put the effect invert on it to change it to black, took the opacity down to about 30% and set it to color burn. Then I staggered the second starburst layer with the first one by about 2 or 3 frames to give it a little more randomness, and that way the starburst could look a little bit more like the actual volumetric lighting that we get in the Marvel titling. And these particles, I'm turning the birth rate up to 10 and the longevity up to 0.77. That way they're born more frequently and they last longer. Then I cranked up the birth size to make the central emitter look more nebulous, and I cranked up the volume shade to give it a little more texture and randomness. Then I set the layer mode to multiply. Now we're going to do those little pink letter overlays, which are just going to be the outlines of the text to go through the echo and punch up the retro 80s echo effect. So we're going to hit Control T to get the type tool, and we're going to type Thor in Dameron as just outlines, and we want to make it the right size and also make it this big like bright cool pink, you know, like really like you know, that 80s, you know, retro pink that's just everywhere. And then we're going to put our anchor point right in the center using the anchor point tool. Just drag and drop right in the center. Okay, so it looks too small, but that's just because we haven't made it a 3D layer. So we're gonna hit toggle switches and modes, check the box, and remember we're at -2230. There we go, and let's position that guy up in the Y coordinate because we want it to be pretty much in line with the 3D layers. You know, a little bit off, but not quite. Because remember, it's flat and these are 3D extruded layers, so we want there to be just a tiny bit of offset, not a whole ton. And then we're going to drop a keyframe there at the beginning. And actually a little bit before the echo settles, we want to have it in the finishing position. We want it to finish a little quicker than the main type. And right now I'm moving the keyframe over here because I want to really properly align the final position. And then I'm going to drag the keyframe back to a little before the end of the 3D types animation. Because remember, you want it to really be stuck on the keyframe. Alright, and now we're going to half the number of echoes. We're going to take it down to 5. It's 2.5 for the decay. I actually changed the setting of all the echoes to 2.5 rather than 3.5. Either way for your project is fine. I just kind of fine-tune and fiddle as I go along. And then you want to stagger the animation, you know, like literally by like a frame, maybe 2, so that the offset is just a little bit there. You'll see here. Let me get you a more clear RAM preview. Hang on. Yeah, there, see, and what we're gonna do is just dissolve this out, like fade it with the opacity so that, you know, it by the time it lands it'll be gone. So just 100 down to 0. It's a little herky-jerky. Cranking up the decay so it'll be a little smoother. I've cranked it up to 4.2. And then I'm going to set it to luminescent premal. That's just for now because I haven't really found anything I liked better. That white outline kind of bothers me, but I do like the really intense color glow that you get from this overlay. Like as you can see, you get like really punches up that fade in to the type effect. And I'm not really sure about this cross dissolve, so I'm gonna play with the keyframes a little till I get it just right. Trying to get rid of those little white lines there. Blend seems to work for the echo overlay in that regard. Now we're just going to do the same thing with the Ragnarok. Make sure you change it to the Madi Thorson type. That same pink. Try to spell it right. I'm going to try that again. Ragnarok. Okay. Alright, and then we're going to align it here. After we fix the anchor point, remember right in the center is where we want it. Hit V to get back to the selection tool. Drag and drop. And now remember that as with the paint layer, we're going to have to mess with the scale and position to get this just right on the 3D layer because it's still 2D. So first I'm going to scale it up. Right about there is looking good. And then hitting shift while we drag the timeline to latch onto that keyframe in Thor. We're gonna keyframe the position, the ending position for Ragnarok. Turn it into a 3D layer and then put it at -2230. And then we're going to drag it down so that it lines up with just a little bit of offset. And just click the echo in the Thor outline, Control C, Control V into Ragnarok. Pew. And luminescent primal again. And then we want to use the opacity to fade this out again, as we did with Thor. And just want to make sure that they're in the same spot. Shift and then drag. And take it down to 0 with your second keyframe. Then remember to stagger your Ragnarok a couple frames, just like Thor. Now we're going to add a glow to the type layer. The glow is going to look really intense on all of our type layers. So what we're going to do is play with it at first. I want to get the right look. Yeesh. Because glow can look really good or it can look really bad. Let's keep the radius kind of low on the outlines. Make sure that your glow colors are the original colors. And then just also put all the same measurements, you know, for intensity and radius and all of your glow. That way it looks uniform. I'm not totally in love with that. And now we're gonna mess with the glow on the 3D type. Just crank it up. It's a little blown out looking right now. I'm gonna duplicate the type layer, and right now I'm gonna mute the glow on that one, and then I'm going to mess with the layer mode of the second one. That way the glow can kind of be a separate layer that we can control a little more easily and stylize a little more. Just going through all these options, trying to find out what's best. Oh, I like that. That looks really pretty. And it'll give us some good color depth and light and shadow play on the type. So now we're going to put the glow back on in the bottom. And we're going to take the opacity down pretty low, about 20, on that second exclusion layer. 15. Yeah, 20 is about where we want to be. And then I want to bring down the radius a little bit and the threshold up. Crank up the intensity. I want to get the radius just right. I don't want it to look really cheap. Sorry, this is turning into less of a tutorial and a little bit more of a process video right now. Because with developing a look, it really is about experimenting. You know, if you have any questions about anything I'm doing, just let me know, okay? Because I'm more than happy to answer them. And now we're going to do that final little, that light streak that is in between Thor and Ragnarok. And so I'm going to have you take the Ellipse tool, and in the shape layer, I want you to solo the shape layer, which means just check the box on the far left that has the circle, so it's just the shape layer by itself, and we don't have to worry about anything else, like looking at anything else, while we set up the ellipse. So I want you to make sure that it has a fill, and take the stroke down to 0. And then the fill is going to be, we're going to make it white for now. I'm going to use a 4-color gradient. I'm going to take each point of color and put it on a different point in the quote-unquote line. So one there at the very edge, one there sort of in the center, another point to balance it, and then the final point on the other edge, the other point. So the ones on the end I'm going to make black, so we have sort of a feathered look. And the ones in the center I'm going to make blue and very, very white, like a cool white, and a nice sort of lightish blue, like high saturation, like that. Okay, so this looks a little cheesy right now, but then we are going to put on a blur. I do always love a Gaussian blur. So then, you know, crank the blur up and make sure that the edges are repeated. Just keep cranking it till you get that sort of really soft, it should look like it's glowing by itself, kind of. And I'm going to go into the ellipse path and make it thinner First, I'm going to unlock the size or the scale, and I'm going to take it down. 10 is a little too thick still, so we're going to take it to 5. Make it a little longer, and change it to add. Well, right now it's a little invisible. Change it to normal. And then let's see how it's looking in the final shot. So let's put it up so it's in the right spot. And it's looking a little too blurry, so we're gonna take the blur down a touch. That was a little much, I have to say. That's closer. A little more. Yeah, that'll do it. So I'm gonna delete these 2 copies, which was a mistake. I'm going to put the blur right about there. Yeah, there we go. We've got like a nice, very clearly defined, but still soft. All right, we're gonna put it to add. See how that looks. And now to animate this bad boy, we are going to lock the proportions in the scale, or the size, again. Come to about here. We want just after the type transition's finished for the line to spread. We're gonna keyframe the size, that's the end. Drag it out a little bit. And then we are going to take the X coordinate down to 0. Our second keyframe, and let's see how that looks. And let's just make sure it only starts on the keyframe. That way we don't have any weird little dots or anything. And I'm gonna easy ease these keyframes. Select them both, hit F9 on the keyboard. I'm gonna edit the speed graph now. And make sure I like to fit it to my little timeline. Take this leg, drag it, and this one, push it. And then that's a little smoother. I'm actually going to slow it down so it looks a little better. Yeah. Okay, so we're finished with the initial build. So next what I'm going to show you is a 3-point lighting, just to punch the lookup and give it an extra layer, as well as just fine-tuning everything a little bit more before I'm going to say we're done. So the next part is optional. You've learned the real build of this. The rest is a bit of just tinkering and look development if you want to stick around for that. Now I'm going to show you how I set up the lighting, which is the final step in this tutorial. So I'm going to close all of these guys up because we want to just focus on the lights. So I'm going to first create a new spotlight, and it's going to be pink at about 75 intensity with a 25-degree angle at 100% feather. So right now that's not doing too much. We're going to put this up at the top, change the color so it's easy to pick out. Now I'm going to go into 4 views like this, And I'm just gonna start creating a basic 3-point lighting setup. This is gonna be my fill light. Take it over here. Whoop. Having a little trouble with the point of interest. Wonder what's going on there. Oh, and it would help if I wasn't using the anchor point tool. So make sure you're using the selection tool, shortcut V on your keyboard. And I'm just going to position this light over here as my rim light. Cool. Right, and now I'm going to have another spot. This one I'm going to make, I'm going to have a point light. This is going to be our main light. I want it to be a neutral color like white, but maybe a little bit yellow. Yeah, like a warm. This is going to be our brightest light because it's the main one. We want to put it right near the camera, about 45 degrees away from the camera. And make that yellow. And rename it fill. Oh, no. This is our main light. This guy is our fill light. Got the pink. Fill. Perfect. Alright, and now another spot for our backlight. Take the intensity down. I also have a lighting tutorial, very simple lights in After Effects. Got an ice blue there. Again, narrow angle, high feather. Now I'm going to pull this guy up and take him over here past our point light. Oh. Drag the point of interest over here, make sure it's really on there. Great. Alright, now I'm going to go back to first view. This is kind of subtle, but it just gives it a little more oomph. Make sure this is a 3D layer, otherwise the lights will not affect it. There we go. You can really see the difference there. It's looking a little blown out on that one side, so I'm going to mess with these settings. Yeah, down to 100 for our point light, our main light. Bring it up a little. And I'm gonna pull it over here in the center. Yeah. There we go. So I have a little more evenness to it. Okay. Go to the material options of our type layer. I'm going to turn the light transmission up a little bit, and as well as the specular and the diffusion. Yeah, because we want it to look a little more extreme. So you'll see with this lighting that our pink outlines have turned black. And also this part right here looks nasty when everything kind of comes together. It's just like a bleh, it's like everything is too much, and so it's just yuck. And so we need to fix this by adding another light. We're going to use an ambient light, and I want it to be that same 80s pink of the outlines. Okay. And that is going to solve the problem of the outlines turning black instead of pink, which is an issue. But it's also going to discolor our main one, like the main type layer, a little bit. It makes it a little too pink, especially the Ragnarok text. I'm going to change the color on the fuchsia and rename it ambient. So we still have to fix this, which we're going to do by just keyframing the intensity, which slap keyframe for 100% because that's what it's at. Drag the indicator forward a little bit and take it down to 0. See, you can see it's getting a little bit render heavy with all these effects and such on top. Oof, did not love that. Let's fine tune it. So it'll be nice and quick. And a little earlier. All right. So now we're going to go into the outlines and turn the glow radius down to about 5. And then we are going to add some motion blur to the outlines, the pink outlines. And I am going to change it from preluminescent whatever to lighten, because then we get the nice thin lines. You know, maybe turn the glow radius back up to 20 so we still have that nice little soft, you know, neon look. And let's see how that's looking now. Oh, much better. A lot less crappy, I think. Let's see how it goes with the Oop. Now let's even out that cross dissolve. I'm starting to really be happy with the way this is looking. Everything is moving in concert very well. Of everything, the timing is looking really good. There we go. So that should be it. Yeah. Okay, so thanks for watching. I hope this tutorial was helpful. It was kind of a pain to put together, but if you have any questions, if I left anything out that you're still wondering about, please comment down below. Don't be afraid to ask. I love answering questions. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you learned a couple new techniques or a couple new ways to combine them. I made this because I just got a total boner for this type when I saw it in the theaters. I love this kind of stuff. So, yeah. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Like and subscribe for more. Yeah, this is Julia Griffin for Rivalry Motion Design. This has been the Thor Ragnarok tutorial.